Hello, dear listeners. Welcome to Semaphore Uncut, a podcast for developers about building great products. In this new episode, Darko, the podcast host, welcomes Arun Gupta, VP and GM for the Ecosystem Initiative at Intel. Arun explains OPEA's strategy to even up AI technologies for businesses. I hope you enjoy this new episode, and let's dive in.
Today with us, we have Arun Gupta. Arun, thank you so much for joining us.
Happy to be here.
Can you please give us a brief intro of how you end up doing what you're doing right now?
Today, I am the Vice President and General Manager for OPEA Ecosystem Initiative at Intel. And what that means is I'm responsible for being an internal and external voice for everything open source. Prior to this, I've spent a couple of years at Apple. I built their first open source program office. Prior to that, I was at Amazon, Red Hat a couple of years, Couchbase a couple of years, and then I spent a number of years at Sun and Oracle, where I was part of the team where we took the company from closed source to open source. So pretty much, driving that open source cultural change, getting developers community excited, building them is sort of what I've been doing, and kind of fits very well with what I'm doing here at Intel as well.
Semaphore has released the Flaky Test Dashboard to help you identify unreliable tests in your project. Identify which tests disrupt your pipeline and cost you the most, all in one place. Go to semaphorecI.com/product/flaky-tests-dashboard to find out more.
I know personally that Intel has been, big in open source in many projects for all these decades. So, but maybe if you can, give us, a broad overview of what are all of those, maybe channels that you guys are maintaining through Intel.
If you think about Intel, the way we operate is, fostering an open ecosystem is pretty much the foundation of our approach at Intel. And if we think about, what Intel has done over the years, open source is very much, a part of our DNA from the large time. As you said, we have been the largest corporate contributor to Linux since 2007. We are one of the top contributors to Kubernetes. We participate in 300 plus open source projects. Kubernetes, OpenJDK, PyTorch, TensorFlow, GCC, Clang. The reason we contribute is because our customers who are sitting on a wide range of compute places, data center, cloud, desktop, when they download these open source projects, they expect these projects to work out of the box in a fully optimized manner and leveraging the latest instruction sets. So that's where Intel engineers go out in these open source communities, contribute make sure the features are working fully aligned. They do a lot of contribution. And then for the developers out of the box, that's sort of the customer obsession that we have, or developer obsession, that how we get them working for it. We also participate in 700 plus standard bodies and foundations. And that's really big for us, because while code is king, a lot of the work in the open source community happens in these open source foundations, which is sort of the non-glorious work, but is super important for the sustainability of open source. So we can continue to collaborate and participate there very actively. We do our own projects. So we have 100 plus of our own projects that we have released, and as I said, 300 plus that we contribute to. So it not just benefit everyone, it's benefit basically everyone, not just Intel. And we thrive on that feedback from the community. We fundamentally believe in the code of conduct, as set forth by different organizations such as Contributor Covenant, GitHub, and CNCF, and all of that. Personally, I'm on the governing board of Cloud Native Computing Foundation and the elected governing board chair, the second time elected governing board chair. I'm also on the OpenSSF governing board for a couple of years and the elected governing board chair there as well. And that goes to the testament of Intel that, yes, we are contributing code, but these governing board chair are big responsibilities. and it gives me time and space and support and resources to participate in those roles. And it's not like, oh, you do 100% of your job and then this is in addition to that. No, this is part of the job. So I think in that sense, the culture, the legacy of how Intel does open source and participate in open source is very prominent for pretty much from the beginning.
Yeah, amazing. There are many projects that, live for a long time and have a lot of, support and traction, but they're outside of various, foundations. And then we have seen historically that, some of those projects maybe just, flip the license, or, there is just a lack of support for a particular project. However, just from the security perspective, maintenance of that project is super critical. So I came to realize through speaking with a lot of open source folks, really the value of those foundations that you're mentioning.
Yeah, I mean, that foundational leadership is fundamentally important for Intel. And as I explained earlier, I'm on the CNCF governing board, on the OpenSSF governing board. But then along with me, there are so many other people at Intel that are driving those changes. Within the foundations, you have special interest group or technology advisory groups. These are called as typically the chop wood, carry water roles, because, sure, you can make the actual food, but no matter what, before enlightenment and after enlightenment, you still got to chop food and carry water because that's what keeps it sustainable. So really creating space for these people to do the work, being like Kroll, he is the TAC chair for OpenSSF. And that work, that support that we provide for him is super important over there. In addition, we launched UXL, which is a cross-industry group committed to delivering an open standard accelerator programming model that simplifies development of performant cross-platform applications. We don't want this to be, again, just an Intel effort. This needs to be a collaborative effort across the industry. Similarly, LFAI and data. The effort is to build and support an open AI and data community and data-driven open source innovation in the AI and data domains. So Intel is a premier member of the LFAI and Data Foundation, which basically gives us a seat on the governing board for the foundation. And this position on the board allows us to strategically shape the direction and initiatives of the foundation. Not just LFAI and data. There we contributed to several of the hosted projects, including our own OpenFL. And more recently, we'll talk about this later, is the project OPEA that we contributed to LFAI and data. In addition, we are also on the PyTorch governing board. So again, the part is Intel believes that when we join a foundation, we should join at the right level, because not only we have the engineering depth, but we also have that administrative experience where we can make an impact and technically, strategically, administratively, financially steer the direction to basically represent our customers' interest over there and our developers' interest. Because we talk to our customers, they tell us, hey, we need this to happen. And if they are not represented in the foundation, we act on their behalf in the foundation.
Yeah, amazing. Around a year ago, I was speaking with some friends, from Germany who have a, company which has strong ties to various, automotive companies and so on. And they're mainly in the DevOps world, supporting them with, CI, CD, consulting in those areas. They were asking them, oh, guys, can you help us with, with AI and Gen AI and all of that? And they said, well, guys, what our strengths are, that we don't have that expertise, to give you. But they said, but please, maybe it will be easier for you to hire, some guys and form some teams as a much smaller company than for us, as they were, it's also a bit of a European problem that, a lot of, newest, particularly in this AI space, innovation is definitely happening in the US, and a lot of people just, go where the hottest, market for that is. And they were scraping to get something together. And I don't know what the stage is right now, but I know that they were facing, many challenges. How I do this? How do I do that? How do we, put things together? as reading about, open platform for enterprise AI, I felt that, there are some components that you are addressing through that. But yeah, please tell us more.
Everybody has been looking at it. How can I leverage Gen AI to be more productive, more effective? Because the technology is evolving so rapidly. The LLMs are, pushing out left and right. I don't know if I want to use an open source LLM or a closed source LLM. I don't know what fine-tuning means. I don't have the compute capacity. I don't have multiple months to fine-tune. What about the security? Hey, if I feed my PII into the LLM, would this even work, or would that be exposed in some other customer query where my social security number unfortunately shows up somewhere else? And what use case should I look? So I think this is where the customers are confused, that how should I get started with? Everybody is scrambling. Every hyperscaler is kind of crafting their own bespoke solution and saying, we know it the best. So we have seen this story multiple times. This is nothing new.
Yeah.
And I think that's exactly the gap that OPEA brings in. It's an open source project under LFAI and data. And it's not just a project. The reason we gave it to LFAI and data is because we want this to be neutral governance and really be managed by a foundation. The whole value purpose of there is Intel is one of the biggest contributors, but not the only contributor. We're seeing contribution from a wide range of companies. So that's a good thing. Now, what does it solve really? OPEA really provides you a simplified platform by which you can build your Gen AI applications over there. And if you think about OPEA at a very high level, it consists of two main features. One of them is a construction of these Gen AI solutions. The other of them is a evaluation of these Gen AI solutions. In construction, end of the day, what you want to build is a Gen AI solution. Let's take an example of a simple canonical chat Q&A example, right? You want to build a chatbot where it's going back and forth between you, and what you want to do is you want to leverage an LLM. And the reason you want to leverage an LLM is because it's more knowledgeable about your data. In that LLM, you can inject RAG, retrieval augmented generation, by which you're not directly talking to the LLM, but you are injecting that RAG context into the prompt. That is a prompt that goes to LLM, and based upon that, it generates the right relevant information for you. So you can actually start being more productive right there in the chat as opposed to a traditional chat. Now, how do you construct that chat Q&A? If you think about when you build a Gen AI application, there are a certain set of microservices that you need. Like you need an embed, a microservice that can create embedding. This is a data format that is understood by the vector database in which your context is going to be stored. You need a data store, like a vector database, for example. What vector database is going to be? You need an LLM, which is a large language model, or a small language model based upon where you are trying to deploy this. So you need a guardrail, on how I'm going to protect my query to not expose PII or put security constraints around it. So essentially, what you're looking for is a set of microservices so that you can compose these microservices into a mega service, which is your chat Q&A application. So that's the construction part of it. Now, once you got this up and running, then you want to evaluate that, okay, is it a proof of concept? Is it just a prototype? What about the trustworthiness, enterprise grade readiness? And that's when we have defined a framework. So again, construction and evaluation are the two more main core functionalities of OPEA. And that's sort of where we are focusing. And if you look at the GitHub repo, which is github.com/OPEA-project, there are different repos over there. One of them is the Gen AI comps. And in the Gen AI comps is where all the component microservices are. Or you can look at Gen AI examples, which is where all the blueprints that I talked about, like a chat Q&A. There are multiple other examples. There's one code translator, which takes the code in one programming language to another programming language while maintaining the same functionality. There is a doc summarizer. Lots of different examples over there. So that's the value premise of OPEA is.
if you would maybe describe, the maturity of the framework that you described, and at the level the companies and teams are engaging with it, what would be your assessment?
I would say it's moving at a very rapid pace, though. Just like the technology is moving, and so is the project moving. We launched the project 3.5 months ago now, and at that time we had 14 launch partners. In the last 3.5 months, we are now down to, we are actually now up to 37 launch partners. Now, what kind of partners are joining? What we are seeing is we are looking at partners like Canonical. They are an operating system vendor. They want to integrate it smack in their operating system as well. We're looking at partners like Infosys, which is a system integrator, because they are solving similar problem. They're trying to run these Gen AI applications on a diverse range of architectures. We are looking at partners like Neo4j, because they have a graph database. So the question is that, hey, should we be storing the context information only in a vector database? Other people are running it in their vector, like a graph database. That's where Neo4j comes in. We are looking at partners like Prediction Guard. So when we have Prediction Guard, how could they engage with the guardrails essentially that we can do? We got partners like Docker, where they're talking about, hey, we got a Docker Gen AI stack, and how can we bring that over here? So we're seeing a wide range of partners all across the stack, whether it's Llama Index or Haystack or Cloudera or Clarify or Hugging Face. We're seeing good interest from a large range of partners at varied level of interest. Some are interested in very deep engineering collaboration. Some are like, yeah, just put our name and logo over there. And as the opportunity comes along, we can share it.
Semaphore has released the Flaky Test Dashboard to help you identify unreliable tests in your project. Identify which tests disrupt your pipeline and cost you the most, all in one place. Go to semaphoreCI.com/product/flaky-tests-dashboard to find out more.
I remember, listening to various, special interest groups on the, again, Kubernetes, where, there is potentially, storage solution being, discussed and so on, and a strategy being made, and architecture and so on. I'm curious, how does it work for such a rapidly moving, environment with all of these vendors? I also took a look at the list and see, many people from various countries, participating. So just curious, how do you guys, set up the agenda and, the quarterly goals, and, with so many parties interested?
The project belongs to LFAI and data. So the structure that we're adapting is nothing new. The project has a technical steering committee, and the technical steering committee has members from different folks across the board. So for example, in the technical steering committee, we have a couple of folks from Intel. And the reason we put 2 right now is because that's sort of where the largest code contribution is coming in from. But we got folks from Fidelity and Comcast and Red Hat and Docker and Llama Index and CDW and JFrog. So we got folks from a wide range of community. We are also working strongly on keeping the project very, very open. So frankly, any suggestions, and I play with the project quite a bit. And any suggestions that I have, I don't mention any internal project meetings. I just file the issue on the GitHub, because that's part of the cultural change that we need to bring. That if the leaders of the project are going to do some sidebar discussions, how would people outside the company understand? So we are really operating it in an open, transparent manner, because then the engineering feels like, oh, I got to do that discussion in the public as well. And then once you role model, then hopefully others start implicating that as well. So I think that's the general flow that we're looking at it. And I think you mentioned about CNCF. One of the things that we are working on is how do we collaborate with these different foundations? There's a lot of AI ML work happening in CNCF, and I'm on the board and the chair of the CNCF as well. So how do we showcase the OPEA work? Because end of the day, all the microservices that we talked about, the embedder, the retriever, the re-ranker, all of these microservices, these are all Docker containers, and they're all published on Docker Hub. So for example, 0.9 release came out a couple of days ago. And as part of that, we push these containers up on Docker Hub. And the instructions that are available are like, hey, fire up a Docker Compose, and you can get this chat Q&A example up and running. Or you could say, hey, you could get this up and running on Kubernetes, for example. You EKS or GKE or AKS, doesn't matter. Pick your favorite flavor of Kubernetes, and we can get it up and running over there. So I think in that sense, whether it's a Docker Compose or a Helm chart, doesn't matter. As we are building this OPEA microservices, using containers as a base layer for the microservices allows us to run it on any cloud-native platform. That's the way we think about it.
I know that everybody is welcome, but in terms of like target audience, is it like would it be appropriate for a computer science student to get the Docker Compose, fire it up, and try to get into it? Or it has enterprise in the name, so is it more suited for bigger teams with some concrete set of challenges that they want to solve?
The best way maybe to engage with the project is there are mailing lists. There's a TSC mailing list where most of the technical discussion happens. Join that, participate in that. See. If you have questions, ask that. File GitHub issues that, okay, I don't understand how this works. There are already several samples that are shown up and running. Take a look at that and see if you can get it up and running. The name Enterprise AI says that, okay, I'm not going to deploy a chat Q&A for my local usage, but it's more of an enterprise AI use case. But the technologies are all cloud native in that sense. So if you care about it, if anything that matters to you, jump in. Students are more than welcome, actually. And as a matter of fact, what we are working on right now is a hackathon that's going to be announced soon. And in that hackathon, we have filed a whole bunch of issues that are tagged as OPEA hack. And as part of that hackathon, we're going to invite students, developers all across the world to come participate, help us fix those issues, help us craft those solutions. And maybe if you want to get to a second step deeper, we also have working groups at OPEA. And as part of that working groups, we have a security working group, we have an end user working group, we have a community working group. We just crafted, somebody from the community actually, they're one of the OPEA partners, they created a developer experience working group. How do we bring developers on board? So join that working group. I think there are plenty of opportunities in that sense, in terms of hackathon, in terms of working groups, in terms of the mailing list. Just take a look at it, and frankly, the way open source works is, you scratch an itch, and that makes the overall open source project that much better. So I think that's the way we think about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Open source has like those interesting ways that it develops that you cannot predict. So just thinking, a year from now, really curious, where exactly the project will be, and in what all interesting applications it will be used. So for people to get started, pretty much OPA, you said github.com/OPA-project.
That's what I would recommend is go to opea.dev, and that's your primary source, that's your primary landing page. And from there, of course, you can go to the GitHub repo, and on the GitHub repo, there is GenAI examples. And pick up your chat Q&A as a canonical example. Follow the instructions over there, and there are all detailed instructions on how you can get started. I believe a lot in the good developer experience part of it, so I try it out myself quite a bit. So I fire up those examples, and I always find file bugs on a regular basis that simplify these instructions, dumb it down, make it simpler, make it cleaner, make it easier. You can put the details elsewhere, but for a first-time developer experience, what is my 5 minutes of aha? In 5 minutes, how can I get that? I think that's really your starting point over there. So yeah, try out those examples, join the working groups, spread the word. And if you work for an enterprise, as a matter of fact, if this is a mission that you are working on, we would love to talk to you. Send us an email, info@opea.dev. Send us an email, and we would love to hear from you. Take it a notch higher, become a partner, get your logo and quote, get updated on the website, and we'll send a pull request. Anything and everything is welcome. We are a very diverse and a welcoming and an inclusive community. So we would love to see this pull request coming through.
Amazing. Let's end on that note. Thank you so much, Arun, for guiding us through this interesting project. And looking forward to how it develops.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed my time here.
What a great conversation. We hope you enjoyed it and learned something new. Make sure to subscribe to Semaphore Uncut on your podcast player of choice so that you don't miss our new episodes. And stay tuned.